is to ask and talking about not challenging each other and helping each other. Who do you want to talk about? Is there any person that I think I should meet?
Yes, so two ladies come to mind, because we actually co-founded the agile support group of Zambia together, and we did it all without meeting each other physically. And
Wow.
that is Pendo Manjele and Chimunya. We did not like we the first time we met, we had already had 4 or 5 meetups already.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really nice to meet them. And then I met Pendo also through the Agile Festival. So that's how the three of us connected. And a couple of years down the line, we said, let's start a community. And that's exactly what we talked about. What year are we in? 2022. It was last year, December, we were talked about it. January, we started organizing. And February, we had our first event. And having never met each other in person, we continued like that. Then eventually I ended up meeting Pendo because we were in the same country at the same time. I think it was in June or July. I'm not quite sure about the date. And then Chimunya we still haven't met because she ended up having to move to the US, but we still, host the meetups. And we hosted. Let me see. There's 12 months in a year, so we hosted about 9 or 10 meetups, and then we're looking forward to planning for next year as well. Just trying to build this community from where we are. So yeah, those are the two ladies that I'd recommend.
Hi, today I'm talking with Pendo Manjele. We had a few technical glitches, yet it was a nice conversation about diversity, talking about who are we leaving behind when everything goes digital. We also talked about being the change we want to see and not trying to change the world alone. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello and hello everyone. With me I have Pendo. I forgot to ask you. Pendo Manjele, is that the right way to pronounce the name?
Yes, Manjele is the Manjele. Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay. I didn't ask up front, but I do care about pronouncing the names correctly. And Pendo, when I'm asking where people are, so when we start joining, one of the things I want to show people is where we are, and I'm going to show it thanks to Google Earth. This is me in Belgium, and then Google will tell us or show us a little bit on where you are, and this is moving us. This is moving us, and then close to where you are, and that's I don't see it anymore, but I think that's somewhere in Zambia, right? Is this correct?
Yes, right. Zambia, Lusaka.
Lusaka, exactly. That's the name I was looking for that I couldn't come up with. Okay, let's bring you back on screen. And for me, in Belgium, it's 15 or 16 minutes before 6 in the evening. What time is it on your side?
So it's currently 6:44 p.m. So 44 minutes past 6 p.m.
Yeah. So yeah, 1 hour time zone difference away. So a lot of kilometers, but not that much in time zone differences. But that's how the world works, of course. We jumped already a little bit in knowing, but tell us a little more about you, Pendo. For the people who are here and who don't know you, tell me and other people a little bit about who are you.
All right. Thank you actually for having me once again today. I am Pendo Manjele. I think as you have already shown the people where I am, I'm in Zambia, Lusaka. By profession, I'm a data scientist. I have 5 years of professional working experience in the IT industry.
Mm-hmm.
I've also founded the Agile User Support Group, which is I've co-founded the Agile User Support Group here in Zambia, which is a community where we've created a platform where different people practicing Agile can come together and share their experiences, and we grow that way. And I'm also passionate about building the tech community here in Zambia. And I co-lead the developer Seco community, which has grown over time to about 4,000 K developers. So that's
Wow.
part of the work that I do and who I am.
Wow, wow, that's 4,000. That's an amazing number. So to say, that's amazing. So I'm not surprised that you were asked to join here and then to help out and talk a little bit. Well, let's jump into that first question. What is something people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Something that people don't know about me. Well, that's a very interesting question. And I'll like to trace it back to my upbringing and growing up. So I grew up in Zambia here, but in a very small town of Kalulushi. And growing up, um, well, I was always working. So I started working as early as grade four, my fourth grade. So my parents were a firm
Wow.
believer of my parents were a firm believer of you have to work for you to be rewarded or for you to make money. So that was ingrained in me at a very young age. And so we did have a shop, a small shop. Um, and after work, I would have to go there and after school, I would have to go there and work and after over the weekends as well. Well, it felt like a bit of a punishment then because I wanted to hang out with my friends. But
Mm-hmm.
over time, it really like over time, it's helped me realize that you have to work hard to be rewarded. So I'd get paid at the end of the month or daily at the same time, and also helped me boost my arithmetic skills, or my arithmetic knowledge
Mm.
because I was very poor at mathematics at some point, but because I was working in their shop, I would have to know how much money we've made, how much change I have to issue to a customer that walks in. And so I feel like that has really, it's something that I really haven't spoken about, but I feel like it's really contributed to um, who I am and some of the things that actually drive me because I believe that you have to work hard to get rewarded. And it started from there.
And I can imagine, well, like you said, from a very young age, you had to work with numbers. So if as a data specialist, I would say you work with numbers one way or another. It's of course completely different numbers than you had in the shop. But I can imagine that even at the young age, it could show you like, okay, you can see based on the numbers how good the shop was doing if you were selling well or not selling well, and I can imagine that it made you think about numbers very young, so that I can imagine that yeah. And yeah, if I also understand, of course, when you're young you feel like, oh, I want to be with my friends, so I don't want to work. I can definitely see that it could feel like a punishment. That's not the goal, of course. But at the same time, I can also imagine that you think differently about arithmetics and numbers, because in school it looks like boring things, and for you it was real work, and it was really like, oh, but this is how we get money from our customers, and this is how I get paid, because you were, so what I understand, you were paid also at the very young age by your parents to say, okay, you did the work, but you get some kind of money around that, from the work you did. That's amazing. So it's definitely, I can see how that influences you. Wow.
Yes.
Well, let's go to that next question. That if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you?
Well, I would say I would still choose the same line of work, but since that's discounted in this conversation, I would say I would be a nutritionist, um,
Mm.
mostly a nutritionist, mostly biased towards plant-based foods. I'm quite keen and passionate about eating clean and eating healthy and over time I always like make my own healthy vegetarian organic food, so I'm always advocating for eating clean and going green, and so I feel like in my next life I would definitely be a nutritionist and provide better green food for people, because I think one of the challenges that most people don't eat greens is because it's not as well presented, or there are very few restaurants that offer like well prepared food that's green. So I would be a nutritionist, definitely.
Wow. And is that when you talk also about, okay, the food might not look well, but the data shows me something else. Maybe I'm seeing things, of course, knowing what is your background, maybe I'm seeing things everywhere, but it looks like you're also talking, well, the data shows me that the green food, that healthy food is actually much more healthy than anything you might see in the shops or in the restaurants. Is there a data scientist, or is that your data engineer part, is that ingrained in that idea of looking at food, or has that nothing to do with it?
Well, I would say from observation, especially, well, I'll localize the idea in that most of the local restaurants are more biased, like they're more biased towards the non-plant-based foods, because more than at least 90% of the population are eating, prefer to have their chicken, their
Hmm.
fried chicken, and so the economy of scale. So you find that the vegetable-based food is comes as a side and not as a main meal, and
Hmm.
even in terms of profitability,
For them, it's
it's
much more better. Yes.
yeah. So it makes business sense to sell, well, non-vegetarian meals at scale than vegetarian meals, because the majority are looking out for that. So
Hmm.
um, I would definitely get to that, so that like have more people, like irrespective of the scale, but have more people interested in getting to eat more healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. But of course, if we want to change the world, we should not always look at what's more business wise right now, but in the future, what is best for everyone, money wise, but also value wise, because there's a lot more value than just the money value. Being
Yeah.
healthy is, well, actually, on money wise, it might be better to be even eating more healthy, because it can cost a lot more money if you end up in not in restaurant, in a hospital or in other things. So that even there it might be money wise for yourself, but of course the restaurant doesn't care about people getting into the
Yeah.
hospital or whatever. They look at their own business and keeping their own business healthy. So these are competing models, of course. So that's indeed a completely different thing.
Yeah. And in addition, there's an old adage which says health is wealth. So when you just have those, when you critically think about it, it still bounces back to, over time, being healthy is more like is a high ROI. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely see that if you're unhealthy, well, at some point you will have to stop working, or you won't be as productive at work or whatever, and then money is definitely a big problem
Yeah.
for many things. I think it's a phrase I hadn't heard, but I can definitely see that. So it's a smart phrase. Let's move to that third question. What do you consider your biggest challenge, at least the biggest challenge you want to share, and why is that a good thing for you?
Well, challenge, it's I'm always trying to think around, like in terms of challenges, like is it a challenge or is it an opportunity for growth? So, well,
Hmm.
what I would like to, I think I spoke about being passionate about scaling and advancing the tech community within my
Hmm.
local community here in Zambia, and of course across Africa. So, one of the biggest challenges is how to assimilate that information, or grow the community beyond just the people that are able to afford a laptop or a computer. So it's how can we reach the minority? How can we make tech more inclusive locally? And how can we drive that conversation of we're moving towards a digital age and we don't want anyone left behind? So one of the challenges that has been there is how to include everyone in the most in the path of least resistance. Um, because I think running the community for the last 5 years, the people that we brought along are people who have laptops or people who have the capacity to join. And now our conversations, and also I've also been an avid passionate about including women as well. So in the
Hmm.
process of including women, the conversations are, it's not only women who are the minority in tech, right? There are also people who are living in remote areas. There are people who are living in who are disabled as well. We also have those who do not have who are not financially who do not have the financial muscle to actually be able to learn or, or build technology. So one of the biggest challenges, like I mentioned, has been getting everyone involved, including everyone, because at the end of the day, if we want to drive digital transformation and we're saying we're going digital, is it ethical to leave others behind? Are we being inclusive? Are we building solutions that are accessible for everyone? And if people are being left behind because they are of socioeconomic factors, then it becomes a problem. So I think for me, I'm very passionate about inclusivity and also building creating ethics around some of the works that I'm passionate about, ensuring that no one is left behind, and we're not just thinking of ourselves as, okay, I have a laptop, I'm privileged enough to have a laptop, and I can use a laptop. And so if we're going to say everything is going digital, who are we leaving behind? So I think for me, that's been a conversation that's been at heart, and also a challenge to actually unpack and address.
Wow, it's a very noble and a hard challenge. I know I've in Belgium, in my local town, for 6 years I was co-lead for Code Dojo, indeed. So we were helping people, learning young children to learn how to program. And indeed, we saw the same thing, is that, yes, we had success. Yes, we had a lot of people, but in general, most children that showed up in the beginning were the children of people who were already in IT. So their mothers and fathers were in IT. And so in a sense, that was not the kind of children I was hoping to reach, because we wanted to reach the people, like you say, that don't have a laptop, or their parents have struggles with computers and everything like that. And okay, we gradually, and like you say, we want to reach young women, because in the beginning it was mostly boys, so it took us a while to reach also 50% of girls, so that we had a better spread. But yeah, the harder part was indeed getting the people there that don't have laptops at home. So how could we provide laptops for them, and how could they feel at home, and that the children actually, well, learning to work with the laptop? Because, and that is a big challenge. I agree there. um, and in many things I've seen it, yeah, just the last couple of years with COVID, everything went digital. That's fine, because it brings also other diversity. People who are disabled, who might not be able to go to work, might be able to go to work now with using a laptop. So it brings some diversity, but you need at least to be able to afford a laptop. You need to be able to afford a good internet connection. So that's a whole level of thing. Like you say, that's a lot harder. So is there? Well, I want to go a little bit into that. Is there any tip that you can share around that? What did you do to find these people and to bring them into your communities? Is there anything you can share with people on good practices for that?
Um, One of the ways, I think, like you've mentioned, I think COVID was brought out a certain, gave us an opportunity, well, also the challenge. There was an
Hmm.
opportunity to reach as many people um, within their spaces, their home spaces of comfort. So let's say disabled people, they were able to join, because before COVID, most of our meetups were in person, because we wanted to have people. We believed in people having that physical connection and networking. But
Hmm.
after the pandemic, we were able to reach out to people who could not be physically present, like mothers who have kids and can't come for a meetup because we don't have that space for children, and it's not.
Hmm.
Um, we're also able to reach out to people who were physically disadvantaged as well. But like I said, one of the biggest challenge was, of course, those who can't actually afford laptops. So we were also able to create just have conversations around inclusivity, because sometimes awareness is important. It's always the first step, right? So we always have those conversations. How can we build beyond? How can we build the community beyond people that are like us? How can we extend it to people that are not as privileged as we are? So just that awareness itself brought out, made everyone be more aware about the challenges that are in existence. And sometimes awareness is always the first step before you actually drive the change. And in addition to that, we've also we recently invited, I have a friend of mine who's co-founded Accessibility Africa. Her name is Gertrude. She's based in Kenya. So we recently invited her to just share about what accessibility means for the internet. And I think some of the views that she aired out and shared with the community were eye-opening, because people didn't actually know that the internet hasn't been as accessible and inclusive over time. So how can the blind access the internet? How do the people who are disabled, that don't have hands, how can they access the internet? So just having that conversation and creating that awareness, I think, is a very big step, such that even if someone had to go back and they want to drive a change and they have the capacity to drive the change, they'll think about some of these conversations that we've had around how can I drive inclusivity. So the feedback was overwhelming, in that most people were like, I actually never thought of it in this way. So I think for me that was a very big step, and also just going going virtual for some of our meetups, having hybrid meetups was also one of a big step in ensuring that everyone is included and no one is left behind. But it's still a journey. I think the journey is only 1% done, and we'll keep doing our best. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I look back 20 years ago when browsers started, I remember having lots of discussions with people because browsers offer the possibility for braille readers and everything like that. So it is technically possible for blind people to see things and to do much better than other kind of hardware and software that was existing before. But it's insane how little websites are ready for it and how little websites make sure that things are okay. I've worked in Belgium for the government websites. It is a rule. Government websites, they have to be accessible, and there is some kind of, yeah, I don't know how it's called. There are some guide. Well, it's more than guidelines. I think it's actually laws that tell you if you have to do this and that, then you have to prevent. You have to have these kind of things. But every
Yeah.
time that there is a new developer in teams that are working on these things, in many cases they don't know it yet, or they haven't looked up the new guidelines, because of course guidelines are improving as well for more inclusivity, and so it's interesting. But yes, it's still, I didn't think about a percentage, but I can imagine that you're correct when you say it's just 1% on. We're just at the start of it. It's incredible that we and this is after 20 years of internet, so that's it's insane. But yeah, there is a lot of work there to do. It's I already
Definitely.
feel a lot of passion there. So my next question is actually very related to that. Is that what drives you? Do you know where that drive is coming from to do all of that? You alluded already a little bit about it, but I want to see if you know this.
So what drives me? My If you asked me this question a year ago, I would have told you fear of failure. Um,
Hmm.
but I think after a lot of introspection and just thinking about what uh, what difference do I want to make? What impact do I want to drive? So today, I would say what drives me is making a difference. I'm a firm believer that we all have a way in which we can influence change, positive change. Um, we can't, you can't, of course, I can't change the world alone, but there's a way in which I
Hmm.
can contribute to that positive change that I want to see in the world. So um, I'm a believer of be the change you want to see. So how can I give back? What do I have? What am I learning? What am I getting? How can I reciprocate? So it's in life is about balance. You get, you give. I think like Maya Angelou said, when you get, give, when you learn, teach. So each time, I think that's one of the things that actually, that's one of the quotes that was at the back of my mind. Like, how can I give back to the community? How can I make the change or be the change that I want to see? So through community, through giving back, also through being practical about um, the work that I do, and also having conversations that drive change and also creating more awareness around. Um, of course, I think, like I mentioned, within I think the digital, the tech community is one of the spaces that's
Hmm.
at heart. Yes, but also I think in the data science space as well, my recent passion has been around ethics. So how are we dealing with ethics with the rise of AI? And so it's a simple of just be the change that you want to see and start driving those conversations and don't just complain about stuff. At least be in the arena, like even if you're complaining, but at least you're there in the arena with that experience of what is being done.
Well, and I hear not just complaining, but actively trying to look for a solution with the people. Because being in the arena, I hear it. It's like talking with the people who are doing the work, not just complaining to your friends, but talking to the people who could do and who could make that change. And I want to go a little bit deeper because I feel a lot of that in the passion. I feel it in a lot of what you've done and what you talked already about. But do you also know where that idea comes from being the change? Is that something that you learned from your parents? Is that something that you where do you know where you picked that up, that idea?
Well, being the change and also just driving impact and awareness. I would say from and when I was in university, also through high school. So I studied computer science, and
Hmm.
I wasn't very sure about what I wanted to study because I wasn't aware of what career options were available. But I just went into computer science and eventually it started unfolding and only learned of different diverse paths in computer science. So there was
And
a
were there
knowledge.
just I want to go a little bit deeper. Were there because I have no idea about your country. Were there many women in computer class with you when you went into university? Because in Belgium there's like it's limited. They're gradually it actually it dropped a bit and then it's growing again a little bit higher the last 4 or 5 years. But I don't know how was it for you?
So I think like everywhere else, I would say, okay, so for my class, it was a bit different. The numbers
Hmm.
were close to balanced, so we were seven
Wow.
ladies. But once I got into the industry, once I got into the workforce, the numbers reduced. So
Yeah.
from what I noticed is we're all going to we'll start as computer science, but when you go into the industry, there's a bit of a dropout. So others divert to other non-technical fields. And because I was most of the time I was the only female on the team, or the second female on the team, with maybe one female to 10 men, and so there was that imbalance, which I think is very um, which has been the norm. But of course, we're driving towards changing that narrative. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, but
So
I agree that the people who are leaving, the women who are leaving the industry is a bigger problem than the people who are entering. Well, first we need to fix the leaving part before we should fix the entering part because otherwise it won't work. But still, I was interested to know because if it's already a balance a little bit in your class, that seems to be better. But yes, now we need to fix the fact that people are leaving because the industry is sometimes very hostile. Let's very toxic. Let's put it like that. I think we've seen some examples or a lot of examples in the last year sometimes. So anyway, I interrupted you. You had the rest of an interesting story, so keep talking.
Yeah, so I do agree. There's a leaky bucket there, and who obviously get there to fixing one hole at a time. So, yeah, to answer the question is, I was looking for answers most of the time, and I was looking for inspiration. Um, but all I could see were men, and also the fields were binary. So it's either you get into, like, there was no awareness or no visibility of what what can we do with, like, what difference can I
Mm,
make with being here at university. I just don't want to graduate and get a degree, but what can I do to impact um, the world, you know? And so
mhm,
getting into the industry, I had to figure out so many things on myself, and it was more of a school of hard knocks. So there was a bit of one moment you're like, what am I doing? There was also failure in the process as well. And so the change that I wanted to drive was, how can I experienced this challenge, I experienced there were these gaps, but how can I give back and ensure that those gaps are closed? And in addition, how can I also further extend myself to grow the community and ensure that people are aware of what they can do with the skills they acquire in technology beyond just building applications, but can they solve problems that are really significant to the world, and problems that can like solve real problems that we're facing locally. And so for me, that was one of the biggest drivers of making a difference. So not just on my own, but how can I empower others to be able to make the same difference?
wow, that's yeah, it's a very nice story, and yeah, it was important for me to interrupt because I wanted to hear the other part, but at the same time, I also feel ashamed, like I shouldn't have interrupted because it's a wonderful story at the same time. So yeah. But anyway, we got both part of it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Now, I want to move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement? So this is the moment for you to brag, and I don't know how easy it is for you because some people here on the show have a lot of hard time to brag and to say, "Oh, I'm I don't know how that culture is in Zambia, but or how it is for you. But this is your moment to shine."
Well, thanks for the giving me the moment, the platform to shine. And I think for the most part, I've always been humble about some of the works that I do, and I think it's from the, I think also being a woman, there's
Mm-hmm.
connotation of we're too humble about our achievements. We always attribute them to other people. But
Mm-hmm.
I have grown past that, and I'd say I'm very, like, some of works that I've done in the past that I now look back and say, okay, that was an achievement. So
Mm-hmm.
just building the community here in Zambia, I think that's one of the things that I would speak about, the tech community. So we started the developer circle community with two other colleagues, and that was in 2017 with very few members. I were very countable, five, and over time, it's become one of the biggest tech communities here in Zambia, which has grown to about 4,000 developers. And within the community, others did not have prior software engineering background, but they've learned from the community, they've connected. So just seeing people grow and be empowered, I think for me, that's a very big achievement. From what I said is, um, I like to see the work that I do make a difference in other people's lives. I love to drive impact beyond just doing the work. Like, I always question myself, I'm doing this. What impact, what change am I driving?
Mm-hmm.
And how is this sustainable for the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Is it something I'll still look back and say, okay, I did make this difference? So that has been one of my proud moments. And also the Agile User Support Group. It's a new community. Um,
Mm-hmm. And now we're taking a technique so of the internet.
we started the community in month, and from the conversations that we've had, we've created a platform where people can share their experiences. During the pandemic, businesses were failing, people were failing to cope, and so we said, what can we do to um, contribute in a way and help people, individuals, organizations, and teams. So we said, let's create this platform where people can share their experiences, because sometimes you might be learning or reading the books, but lived experiences are always interesting. Stories are always a good way to learn from others. And finally, I think I've also, in my individual, like as an individual, I think I've also been awarded, like I got an award as the woman in STEM of the year as a result of some of the contributions that I've
Hmm.
made to the tech industry. And also, I also got a reward as the most inspiring lead from the developer community. So I think those are some of the notable achievements so far.
Wow, this is well, like you say. I think it's true. Like you say, many people and women, more in particular, are we like to be humble because, like you say, we think and of course, a lot of that you didn't on your own, and there are people helping you. But I think this is true for everybody achieving anything. I don't think there's many things that you can achieve in the world on your own.
Yeah,
Even people who are, I don't know, champions in whatever Olympics, there is always a team behind it. You only see one person on stage, but there's a whole team behind it. Um, and like you said, you did it with a few others. You started it, and then that grew. But if you can create or yeah, have a community of 4,000 people in about 5 years, that's insane. I mean, that's a very big achievement, and I'm not surprised that you got some awards for that and for lots of other things that you're doing. So yes, you can be proud, and I'm happy that you are proud of it and that you make such a statement. I think that's also on its own a role model because, like you say, it is tempting for many people to be humble. And it depends a little bit. I forgot the name, but I interviewed someone last week. I think it's Jessica Kerr who said, "Well, I'm American, so we Americans we're much more proud. So it's a little bit easier for Americans to brag, but still,
yeah.
it is hard for most people here on the show, and sometimes bragging could be small, sometimes could be big, and this." For me, it feels like a really big thing if you can create such a community with 4,000 people. So thank you for sharing that. I want to move to that next part. Do you have a personal agility tip to share? Is there anything that you do or that you think, hey, this is good to share with the rest of the world?
Personal agility tip. I will circle it back to what has really been helpful for me, especially this
Hmm.
year. Um, I've had a lot of work to do. Um, every other week, community, work, um, family, and just trying to strike balance. So I would say um, incremental, so atomic habits in inverted commas. So I had to
Mm.
learn how to create balance through contributing, making small contributions towards a bigger objective. And also another item that I mean, another agile tip I would think of is continuous improvement, learning. I think my like I said, I think 2 years ago, if you asked me what drives me, was going to be fear of failure. So,
Mm.
how did I overcome that? And how has it no longer been drives me? Creating like continuously improving myself because I believe that failure is it's always attributed towards I have to achieve this big bang thing. I have to move from A to Z at one moment. But I took a step back and said, for me, I'll have to continuously improve something, work on something small, um, the outcome, the process, and say, I've achieved this, and it gives me a sense of achievement, and it would drive me to move towards the next the next chunk of it. So continuously improving myself through learning, like getting all the resources I can to learn, engaging, and also just reaching out to people when I'm not sure, and also just when I have a blocker or I feel like I'm having a challenge, I take a step back and remind myself that I have come so far, and I'm not expected to know everything, but
Mm.
knowing that I need to keep learning is what's important.
And you keep improving. That's what I'm hearing. The atomic habits that you're talking about, the very small things, and then keep working, keep improving. It is indeed something that, well, if I look back, at myself, and it is something that people maybe not always with the words from like you said it, but it's a lot similar to some other people were saying. You need to keep improving. You need to do it in small chunks and keep working on yourself, especially if you're active on multiple fields like you are. You have the community, you have your work, you have your family. That it can become very big, a big mess, and then, oh, what do I do next? Well, if you can do it in small chunks, in atomic things, and habits that they say, okay, what's that thing to do there? And yeah, it's, I like the way you put it. It's a very powerful way of looking at things. And I'm not surprised that this is helping you, or it helped you about overcoming fear of failures. And that's what I heard from a lot of agilists, is that agile, when people are getting used to a lot of that things, when you see every week you deliver something, well, okay, sometimes it goes wrong, but that's just one of the many weeks, and many other times it doesn't go wrong, and then you learn, okay, that's, it just passed. And in many times, well, if I look for myself, the fear of, if I fail, what will other people think? Usually they, when you deliver multiple times and when you're doing well most of the time, then even if there is a big failure, people like, okay, we know that you've, it is not just you, this is just one failure, but you are as a person not a failure. And then it can help you to get past that. So that's, thank you for sharing. Let's move to that next part. And you talked already a little bit about remote and hybrid work. So is there anything you've learned about remote work that you want to share here?
Remote work, I would say, I think he told, if let's say during the pandemic, especially, I think it was an interesting time to experiment and embrace working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I've learned about remote work is, I'll speak to two things: the upside and the downside. So the
Mm-hmm.
upside is, you get you get to plan your work around your life. So you
Mm-hmm.
get to balance, work-life balance is very attainable in that you know what time you're productive. You can attend to your personal, you can attend to you as a person, as a human being. You can attend to some of the work. Like if you want to go to the gym, you can go to the gym and come back. And um, in turn, it also created an ideology of being more results oriented than
Mm-hmm.
being more on how much time have you, what time did you check in, what time did you check out, and can I see you at the at the desk? But at the end of the day, we were all working towards, I was working towards ensuring that my deliverables are set. How I get there, we don't, we do care, but no one really cared if I worked overnight, and what they wanted was, can we see the results, or what challenges are you
Mm-hmm.
having? But let me say the downside. Some of the downside that I learned was, if it's not managed well, it was creating a disconnect between team members. So you'd have new team
Mm-hmm.
members you've never met, and I think as human beings, there's a certain, we work with, we want to create connection with people, have a relationship with people. And being in an IT sector, most there's a little bit of introvertedness amongst people. So
A little bit.
uh, so creating relationships is, I'm happy. I'm happy behind. I won't turn on my camera. I'm happy behind bars. We could just have this conversation, but we need those real relationships, the connections for us to actually
Mm-hmm.
function and work together. So I think it needed a lot more work around how can we strengthen relationships. But if that's omitted, it was creating a case of people burning out or people leaving the work because there's no connection. So I can just resign. But some of the reasons why people stay within organizations is because they have relationships with their colleagues and they don't want to leave. They have to weigh and say, I have this relationship with my colleague. Will I find these relationships where I'm going? But if you don't have those relationships, the moment a big offer or a new role comes in, you'll be like, oh, so easy to leave. And you move to the next. But I think the relationship part was a bit of a challenge and it had to be, but once addressed with defining different ways of collaborating and strengthening those ties, it becomes a walk in the park.
Walk in the park is maybe a little bit exaggerated because it still is hard, I think. But yeah, it's a lot easier. I fully agree there.
Yeah.
But I really like how you phrase it because you really have to pay attention to these things. And that's what a lot of people misunderstand about remote work. Yes, we need to work on the relationship. We need to deal with it, and then, like you say, seeing will we turn on cameras? Why won't we turn on cameras? And a little bit like we said before, depending on how good the infrastructure that the people are, maybe people are not turning on their cameras because they have a very bad internet connection at home. That might all be important, but we need then look at other ways on how can we make sure that we can get these connections and respect the people in who they are. So that's definitely an important thing. And I see, yeah, like before, there is another disconnect to the people who indeed working from home that do have that opportunity, that do have all that privileged material at home, have everything there. So that's definitely something that is hard. But it's I like the way you phrase it also with the balance part, because what you said earlier on, the fact that you people look much more, or at the people in the companies look much more for the value. What value are you bringing, and not just what hours are you bringing? That's it. It should always be about that value. And just today, I read somewhere that people in your company, they bring three things. They bring time. They bring what was the second thing? So they bring time. They bring there was a second thing that I can't come up, and then they bring do they care about it? So and that third part is sometimes forgotten for whatever reason. I know that the second part people think much more about, but of course I forgot now. But it's not just about the time being there. It's also about these connections. It's also about, okay, do I care about my job, and do I, yeah, yeah. And the more we have connections, the more we do care, and the more we make sure that we have that value there. So that's
Yeah.
really important that you bring that up. Okay, let's move to that next question. Is there a book that you want to talk about, or what would
An
you?
agile book.
Yes.
So I think my favorite, or well, not my favorite, but one book that I feel is a book that anyone practicing agile must read is the Phoenix Project.
So that's this one, huh? The Phoenix
Yes,
Project.
that one.
And what is for you so important? What did you learn from this book, or why do you think everybody should read it?
Well, I think one of there's so many valuable lessons that can be drawn from that book, especially in environments where you everyone is at the end of the day as an organization, we're working towards a common goal. So the common goal can be driving revenue growth, um, and we might have one team. We can't work in isolation, so how we are working, we're all working towards achieving the same goal. And so we have to work together. We have to collaborate effectively. We don't have to play blame games, and we always have to pick the corn when someone drops it. So from the Phoenix Project, it was quite an interesting book because I was able to relate from at every like from the beginning to the end. I was able to relate from the IT environments that I've worked in, how having a big project that you're working towards can create a lot of tension in an organization, and how different units of the organizations blame each other. We're not driving sales. Okay, it's IT, their systems are always down. No, it's marketing. They're not driving they're not communicating the value right. And then there's security, who's also very concerned about you want to ship fast. Have you put these things in place? And then, so there's always those impediments towards growth. And at the end of the day, instead of achieving the objective, driving or working towards achieving an objective, everyone is just playing the blame game. No, we're not achieving this, we're failing, or we're not achieving our targets because this person here has dropped the ball. But when you think about it, when people work together and say, how can we prioritize? How can we apply agility? I think from the Phoenix project, there was a lot of agility, and you could tell that it was continuous improvement. They started with the board, they started with how can we come together, create, establish those relationships, see how our work comes together and fits in the bigger picture, and how it complements each other rather than one unit sitting in their confines, thinking they're working towards achieving a bigger objective, but it's just going to break and crumble the organization. So it was quite an interesting book to read and see how they continuously improved and until they reached the optimal through collaboration and also understanding how each of them, what each of them brought to the table.
I really like that, and yes, indeed, it's a book that I know that. Well, I heard some of the backstories. I've never discussed it with the authors, but I heard some of the backstories how they written it 2 or 3 times before they were happy with that story because they really wanted to bring that feel like you just explained, real life feeling and how you deal with it and that how you can succeed it. And still, because it's in the beginning, you almost feel the anxiety. You almost feel how, yeah, how this the how's it called, the person who speaks or who writes the book, you feel the tension that he has. Oh, I got this new assignment and I need to do it, and how will I do it, and will I do it? And then there is also, it's not just the problems at work, but there is also issues at home. I don't remember the details anymore because it's time ago, but I remember that it was just not focusing pure at work, because that's like you said, there is work life balance. We need to deal with that. And the problems at work, they also come at the wrong moment, at the moment that in your life you want to do something else. And that book is so clearly showing some of these things. That's at least the part that I do remember. And it's been a while that I've read it, but I like it as well.
Yeah.
It's been a war, yeah. And it, for the people who haven't read it, what we didn't say, it's really a story. So it's written as a story, but it also has some technical. So it really, yeah, it gives some really good advice on how you can deal with these kind of situations. And that's indeed a very nice book that a lot of people should read if they haven't read it. Okay, I want to move to, for me, one of the most nicest questions is that what question do you think I should also ask you? Because I know I can't ask all questions to everyone, and there is always a question that maybe you want to answer more. So what's that question that you really said, if you should have asked?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was about to say that you've actually asked all the questions. But maybe one question that I think would be I would like to answer is what is the state of agility in
Mm.
Zambia?
Yes, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so the state of agility in Zambia is, I'll speak from experience and also from, I think, my interaction as a co-founder of the Agile User Support Group. So uh, I've observed one thing, I think, from the different individuals that we've invited, and it's agility is not a cast in stone. So if
Mm.
one organization has implemented Agile, um, you can it's the idea or it's more of the mindset that we need to adapt to and not a
Mhm.
framework. It's not a brick and mortar. So just because this organization decided to um, get rid of all their directors to
Mhm.
eliminate bureaucracy, we should do the same and call ourselves agile. And so um, over time, I think what the state of agility has been, it's not been there's still a lot of gray areas, there's still a lot of gaps,
Mhm.
especially in public offices. Bureaucracy is still the talk of the day, but at the same time, I think there's still the awareness. We're still in our awareness phases. For the private sectors, there's a bit of shaken, because they've shaken that because they need to remain alive. They have to move fast. They can't afford to miss opportunities. So there's a bit of that agency of going agile. How can we be agile? How can we train our individuals to become agile, to respond to change fast? But of course, bureaucracy has remained quite bureaucracy hasn't been eliminated yet or dealt with. But like I said, it's a journey, and you have to really find what works for you first before you can actually implement the change. Because in the process of saying we want to adopt what the Agile Manifesto says, we eliminate bureaucracy at once, you might crumble. So it has to be a continuous, gradual process that everyone needs to now buy into. But like I said, it has to be continuous improvement. So our state right now is still in the awareness phase, and also creating small incremental changes, which also includes, I think it's in the past few months, we've seen organizations going remote first. We've also seen emphasis on digital transformation, because it's one of the things that enable agility. If people are going to work from anywhere, are we ready for that? So we are in the preparation stage, and hopefully with initiatives like the Agile User Support Group, where we'll be able to diffuse and create more awareness and drive the change that we want to see.
Wow, it's yeah, and I think this is where a lot of us are. I think this is not specific to Zambia. I don't know, of course, your situation in your country, but if I compare to a lot of other companies, sometimes people want to do a waterfallish way. Let's have one big project to go agile. Well, that's actually, even if that would work, that would not work, because then you don't teach the people what you need to do. You need to have small things. Um, and we shouldn't always forget that there is a reason why there was that bureaucracy. There is a reason why there were certain rules. They were created because there were problems in the past. And so maybe they no longer work. So that's fine. We need to change them, but we need to replace them by something else to solve the problem that was there in the past. Maybe the problem is gone and then we don't need it. And that's what I see in a lot of companies. We sometimes still have rules for things that are no longer a problem, and that are totally wasteful. Even in the Belgium government has a lot of strange rules that are in there for, like, if Belgium law has rules that are there, laws that are there for 100 and 200 years about, I don't know, horses and whatever, that are no longer, we don't have horses in traffic like they used to be so many years ago. And so that kind of bureaucracy we should remove. But at the same time, there still is a lot of laws that are there for specific reasons. And if it's bureaucracy inside companies, we have the same kind of thing. So even for that, we don't want to go too fast, that we don't, we're not thrown back to the past. And that's indeed figuring out what do we need and at what level. That is, it's very, like you say, a very small step, small things to do there. And well, it's nice that you create that user group and that people can be much more aware. And talking about user groups and other people, what is a person that you think I should invite next?
I think Chimunia Kabunda.
And I didn't check it anymore, but is that her?
Yes, that is her. Yes.
Yes, yeah. I said I didn't check it anymore because we rescheduled our thing, and I know that I looked for that that picture before, but I didn't check it just before we started talking. So tell me a little more about her. Why should I invite her?
Well, I think one of in terms of Agile, we have had a shared passion of how can we scale and contribute to the advancement of agility here in Zambia. She's currently based in the US, but she's a Zambian, that she's always looking out for how can I contribute back home? How can I drive agility back home? And how can I deploy some of the works, some of the new things I'm learning from here, and be able to transmit them back home, import that information back home. So I think you'd have an interesting conversation with her. on some of the work and impact she's driving within her sphere.
Wow. And so she's learning in the US, but then bringing it home and probably learning from that situation as well. So that is indeed a very interesting conversation to have. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for your time and your energy. And if people want to contact you, if they want to reach out to you, what would be a good way to reach you and to connect with you?
Well, on LinkedIn, I'm quite active there. So
This
you can
should
just,
be the link to your LinkedIn page. I don't know if you know the number by heart, but if I'm lucky, that's the right connection.
yes, that's the right. I don't know the number by heart, but I should believe them. It's the only account I have,
Mhm.
and LinkedIn and Twitter. But LinkedIn is more of a primary way of connecting with me.
I didn't add Twitter anymore because we're recording this on the 26th of November, and these days it's very strange where Twitter will go in the next weeks and months. So that's why I didn't prepare the Twitter because it's kind of strange what's happening over there. So maybe in a year we don't hear about it anymore. So I thought let's focus on LinkedIn for now. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you very much for your time. It's been a lovely conversation. I've learned a lot about you and about your country and all the things that you did. So it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation as
Thank
well.
you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.